to the words of the Master and talk about Yeshua, who foretells his death and resurrection again. He does it again.
Is this going to be the third time?
Is it the third time or the second time? I know it's at least the second time. It could be the third time. I'm not saying that it isn't. I can't remember. He definitely has done it before. And now he's doing it again. I think one time was softer because he said when he just said that he was not given a sign except for the sign of Jonah. So maybe it is the third time. I think he said that, and then I think separately he said that he was going to die and come back again. Well, I could be wrong. All right, so Matthew 17, we're going to look at Matthew 17, 22, all the way through 27. Mark Mark 9, verse 30 and 32, and Luke 43 and 45. Let's go over, let's see which ones we're going to look at here. Let's read, let's just go through and read Matthew 17, 22 and 23, and then we'll do Mark. Let's just read them all just to see if there's differences between them. There's a second part that I added to it just because it's so short. I didn't want to only do that, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Matthew 17, 24 through 27 after we talk about this first thing. But let's first look at Matthew 17, 22 and 23.
It says, and while they were staying in Galilee, Yeshua said to them, the son of Adam is about to be delivered up into the hands of men, and they shall kill him. And the third day he shall be raised up, and they were deeply grieved.
Okay, very good. Okay, so let's add to that then Mark 9:30 through 32.
It says, and going from there, they passed through Galilee, and he did not wish anyone to know. For he was teaching his taught ones, and said to them, the Son of Adam is being delivered into the hands of men, and they shall kill him. And having been killed, he shall arise the third day. But they did not understand the word, and they were afraid to ask.
Okay, so just already we see he said what he said, and it said in Matthew it talks about them being deeply grieved. In Mark here, it said they didn't understand what it was or what he was saying, and it was so, I guess, strange for them that they was afraid to ask. And also a difference in Mark is it talks about them passing through Galilee, but it adds in Mark that he did not wish anyone to know. So they're kind of secretly going through Galilee. They're trying to be kind of incognito at this point. All right, and then now let's look at Luke 9, 43 and 45.
It says, and they were all amazed at the greatness of Elohim, and while all were marveling at all that Yeshua did, he said to his taught ones, lay up in your ears these words, for the Son of Adam is about to be delivered into the hands of men. But they did not understand this saying, and it was veiled from them, so they did not perceive it. and they were afraid to ask him about this saying.
Okay, so now in Luke, now there's this additional aspect of, Mark said they didn't understand. Matthew just talks about the fact that they was grieved by hearing it, but Luke talks about the idea of the thing that he said. Not only that they didn't understand, but that it was veiled from them so that they didn't perceive what it was that he was talking about. Okay. All right, so let's go back. Just slight differences there. Let's go back to Matthew. Let's go over to Matthew. And so Matthew, it says while they were staying in Galilee. And remember, Mark was like as they were passing through Galilee. Galilee being kind of, again, that northernmost section of the Holy Land. And so Yeshua here makes this proclamation to his disciples, again referring to himself. It's almost as if he's almost continually referring to himself as the Son of Man, the Son of Adam. Lately, as he speaks with his disciples, again, saying that this whole idea of the Son of Man points to Messiah, where the Messiah is like unto the Son of Man, like it talks about in the book of Daniel. And so we see over here in Matthew 17:22 where he says the Son of Man is about to be delivered up. I want to look at that word there, delivered up. Son of Man is about to be delivered up into the hands of man. Okay, so that word there in the King James uses the word betrayed. The word there, paradidomai. I can't say those Greek words. The word means to surrender, to yield up, to entrust, to betray, to bring forth, to cast, to give over. It has the idea of giving one over to, but the King James, interestingly enough, uses to be betrayed. Now, somebody could give you up. Somebody could give you up, but not be betraying you. Betraying you has to do with some type of relationship that's involved. Right? If I'm just walking down the street and I see somebody snatch some lady's purse and then I watch them run across the street and I'll be like, oh, he's right there. He did it. I'm not betraying him. I don't even know the guy. But I'm giving him up though, right? But the idea of betrayal assumes a relationship. Right? There's a relationship that is assumed. And so now this is an added situation that's being spoken of, because when you think about the idea of betrayal, now who's the one that's going to betray you? Certainly not any of the disciples. Is probably like certainly none of us would betray, right? But it's interesting if we look at things like, let's turn to Matthew 10, 3 and 4.
says Philip and Bartholomew, Toma and Matityahu, the tax collector, Jacob, son of Alphi, and Laban, whose last name was Tadai, Shimon the Canaanite, and Yehudi the Quereth, who did also deliver him up.
Okay, Judas. Judas is always evil-tongued. His name can't be mentioned without talking about him being called the betrayer. Right? Every time he's mentioned, he has that, it's like that's part of his name. Judas, the one who betrayed him. But that's our word right there, right? Who did also deliver him up. That's the same word. And the same thing is done in Mark.
Or there was, for whatever reason, I remember two philosophy professors. The other one, he was against the Bible. And then he got up there and said he read the Bible front to back like 3 times. And basically he was like, I don't know who will believe any of that stuff. But then he said that he was basically philosophizing why people aren't named Judas. They might be named Judah, which is the same name.
Mm-hmm.
But like people don't necessarily name their child Judas.
Yeah.
Because of the association of the betrayer.
Right.
It's too much of a strong.
Yeah, it's like an epitaph just to even say Judas. Like,
You're a Judas.
You a Judas.
Yeah. That's his claim to fame.
I know, it's a terrible claim to fame.
Anyway, I don't know why I just remember them talking about that.
Yeah. Well,
Nobody named their child that.
yeah, it's relevant because just thinking about the fact that when Yeshua's talking about this this thing that's about to happen, the fact that he's going to be delivered up, again, he's giving more details, right? He's giving more details about what's going to happen. To use this terminology, that he's going to be delivered up, even though at this time the disciples, they don't understand, they don't know what it is that he's talking about. It's kind of scary to them. They're grieved about it. They're scared to ask more questions. When we look at what he's saying, we see this word here that understanding that it can mean many things, but in the context, and because we already know what happened, when he says delivered up, he's saying to the rest of the disciples that one of you is going to betray me. He's saying it without saying it. He's about to be delivered up into the hands of men. And I was just kind of referencing the fact that we see most times that it mentions Judas, it uses the same word, saying that he, that's what his claim to fame is. That's what he's known for, is betraying Yeshua. Okay, so when we think about then what it is that Yeshua is speaking about, it causes us to think about the fact that Yeshua has a mission that he must accomplish when he comes to this earth. And so we see that, and as we look at his life, going through all these things, you're seeing that as he's going through these places, he's saying for the he does these miracles. He asks for them to be people to be quiet about it. He's doing these things. He's trying not to be too, put too much of himself forward. They're going through kind of their hometown area here, and he's trying not to be seen by people, all because he wants to be able to do all of the things that he's supposed to do without these people kind of pushing his agenda forward. Right? He has a timeline that he's moving on that he doesn't want to compromise. But he must die then. He has to die. He came so that he could die. And so it's interesting when we look at Yeshua, now he's getting to the place where he's trying to get his disciples ready for this idea. Which, again, at this point, whether it was 2 or 3 times that he's doing this, he's trying to ready them for this, this hard but necessary truth that he's going to die. And so there's a couple things that he is speaking about that he doesn't go into depth of course, but just the fact that he's mentioning it, I thought that we talk about it a little. First of all, the fact that, well, I guess if he's going to be killed, he has to die, right? He has to die. And so we know that he has to die because he is, when he first came on the scene, John the Baptist calls him the Lamb of Elohim. The Lamb of Elohim. He's a sacrifice for sin. He's the sacrifice for sin. He has to come and die. It's interesting that we have this type of a situation. Why did that have to be part of the situation? The idea of him dying. Israel wasn't able to be redeemed in any other way but this sacrifice, this death that he had to. You think about the original redemption of Israel. The redemption, the rescue from Egypt. Israel made it out of Egypt intact. They didn't make it into the land intact, but they made it out of Egypt. The redemption happened, and the people that were being redeemed, they made it out. But I was going to say, David, there's 2 different things. The time of Moses, they were together because their minds were set on we needed help. Take us from bondage, so that they're all on the same one accord. Lord, help me. We're being, they hear, their minds are scattered. No one's righteous enough. So they're all doing all forms of different evil. So you need someone to, that's what I think. Yeah. I think that the why of Yeshua having to die is multifaceted. there's many reasons. There's many reasons that Yeshua has to actually die. I think the going back to Egypt, there was death that happened that facilitated the redemption, which makes it be the same, right? You had to have the lamb that had to have been slaughtered, and the blood on the doorpost was one thing, but an integral part of the redemption part, not only the lamb, but also even the last plague, I would say also. The death of the firstborn. So there was these two deaths that kind of were necessary parts of the redemption process in Egypt. But also when you think about the fact that Israel was redeemed from Egypt, but they wasn't redeemed from Egypt just to get into the wilderness. They were supposed to go out and get to the land. And those people didn't make it to the land that came out of Egypt. And so that's even another aspect of death that had to take place for the total kind of redemption piece to happen. So when we think about the idea of redemption, death, is part of it. We have the sacrifice of sin, which we think about in terms of, what Yeshua provides. But when we think about Yeshua and who he is, and him having to die, I think it also, one thing that I think about is the fact that when we think about Israel, and because Israel's relationship to the Most High is spoken of in different ways. Israel could be the firstborn of the Most High, a child of the Most High. But Israel is also spoken of in terms of the bride also. And so when we see in with ancient Israel, how it talks about the idea of the Most High divorcing Israel. But then we also see at the same time the fact that he is going to bring Israel back after he divorced. And so after Israel is divorced, from a Torah perspective, and Israel divorced and goes out and finds all these other husbands that Israel attaches herself to. But yet and still the Most High says he's going to take Israel back. And so I think another reason that we look at the fact that Yeshua has to die is to fix that situation. It's the fact that the Most High wants to be rejoined with his people, but the only way to do that according to the standard that he created for his own self is that there has to be a total separation, which can only be in the idea of death. Right? Because he can't remarry this people, this bride that became joined to everyone. that turned itself into a harlot, right? Undesirable is better. It's better. Okay, so the why of Yeshua having to die, I'm saying there's a list of reasons. There could be more things that go on the list. So there's just a few that I just came up with. But there's a list of reasons why Yeshua has to die. And so he brings that up. The disciples, they don't understand, right? And so also the other thing is that he brings up is resurrection. It's interesting that the people of this day had a thought of resurrection. But there's not many scriptures or teachings on the idea of it from the law and the prophets. And so they have this idea, the Pharisees at least believed in the idea of resurrection, but where did these doctrines come from? Because they're definitely not explicitly spoken of in the Torah or the prophets. If anything, they're kind of hinted at, which is kind of one of the reasons why the Sadducees, who were kind of these people who were kind of literalists, I should say, they didn't believe in resurrection of the dead. Because there wasn't these explicit ideas brought forth in the Torah and the prophets about it. But then again, at least for the second time, if not the third, we see Yeshua here mentioning this idea of resurrection. He's causing us to know that this is a important component to his reason for actually being, coming and, his experience.
I mean, I just can't imagine what they think that when he's talking to him. Like,
I mean, it says they were deeply grieved. It didn't even say that they were grieved. It said that they were deeply grieved. Let me see. What does that say? Matthew 17, 23. Distress, much degree. Right, so this is there's two words. It really is, like in the Greek, it really is this idea of giving you the idea of sorrow and then like an intensified sorrow. Like a high degree of sorrow. Like they was really messed up about it and they didn't know what to do. They didn't want to talk to him about it. They were scared to talk to him about it. As they should. I mean, can you imagine just living this regular old life as they was? They was living this regular life, and then all of a sudden, this character comes on the scene who's Yeshua, who's going around, and he's not only changing all of these people's lives, but he's also discipling the 12 and instructing them on how to change these people's lives for the better. He's literally turning the world upside down, and I don't know how far along we're talking here in terms of years they are. It seems like whatever it is, it seems like it's the middle. at least the middle, where now so what, this is all going to end in just this short amount of time? And so they don't know how to digest or process this whole situation. But just the idea of resurrection, I think that he's bringing up is another important component of what it is that Yeshua, our understanding of Yeshua, this idea of resurrection. We see that in the resurrection, Yeshua actually is exemplifying for us. He's being the first fruits of those from the dead, and he's showing that in him that we actually conquer death. What's that scripture where it talks about triumphing over death?
Corinthians 15, 55 and 58, resurrection chapter.
No, I don't think it's a resurrection chapter.
Because that's where you're good, that's where you're
Is that Second Corinthians? I'm thinking of triumphed over openly or something like that. Something like that. What verse is that after?
Colossians 2, verse 15, spoiled principalities.
Yeah, that. What verse is that?
Colossians 2.
Colossians 2:15. Yes. Can you read that one?
Yeah, having stripped the principalities of the authorities, he made a public display of them, having prevailed over them in it.
What does that say in the King James, KJV? Some things you just gotta have in the King James.
Yeah. Having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it.
Okay, yes. And so he's talking about death, though, right there. He's talking about this power of the flesh that is had over humanity, that through what Yeshua has done, those things are defeated. And so as he's talking to his disciples, as he's relaying the idea that he is going to be killed, and the third day he's going to raise up, the idea of death, this thing that we think of as this finish line, as the end of the road, as this thing that causes finality. He's saying that isn't the end. In fact, it's the beginning. And so when we think about the idea of Yeshua, who at this point didn't say that he's the life yet, but understanding that in and through Yeshua, we experience life. So much so that death can't even hold us. And he again exemplifies this when he talks about this idea of him being raised up on the third day. And so it's interesting when we look at Yeshua, who this again is talking to his disciples, and he says this thing, which is a huge kind of statement that he's making here. But in that, kind of all of the theological insinuations that he's making when he says that he's going to be killed, he's going to die and raised on the third day. What you said?
I said betrayed.
Yes, not only died, but betrayed, and also, but most importantly, the other thing is, when, from a Hebraic standpoint, the idea of where it says in verse 22 that he's delivered up into the hands of men, from a Hebraic standpoint, like, it's one thing to deliver one of your own to one of your own. That's one thing. It's something that's allowed. That's a thing there's not any taboo with that. If somebody within the nation is going out of bounds, doing things that they shouldn't be doing, for you to give them up to someone in the nation, fine. It just needed to be that. But it's interesting that here, in all cases here, it says that he gives them up into the hands of men. But later, it talks about being given up into the hands of sinners. And there being Gentiles involved in all of this situation, because we know that, at this time, Rome is in control, right? And they have to go and get permission from the powers that be in order to even do any of this. So when we think about the idea of being delivered up into the hands of men, there's also kind of this situation where these men are evil men. They're not even just like regular or righteous, upstanding men. However, be that as it may, the process still is something that had to happen. And so it's funny that you think about, if you're another thing on a list of things that you can't talk about in the world that we live in. You can't blame the Jews for killing Messiah, because that's some kind of anti-Semitic thing that you've done. Even though I don't know how you separate.
They are delivering up
to kill him. Like, he's literally going down to Jerusalem. He's literally on his way down to Jerusalem, where all the heads of the people are. And that's where they're going to catch him at. Mm-hmm. Like, it's goofy to think about, to subtract the Jews from the process. They're part of the process. I'm saying we can call them wicked because they have wicked intentions. But at the same time, as there was wicked, it was a necessary part of the process. He had to die so that he could be and do the thing that he came to do. All right, so again, looking at these two verses here, it gives us, it puts in our minds the idea of the fact that Yeshua had to die, and it kind of reminds us of this whole thing of the resurrection. All right, does anybody have any questions or thoughts about that before we just quickly look at this last part of Matthew? All right, let's go down to Matthew 17, 24 through 27. Let's read that and talk about that before we conclude.
It says, and when they came to Capernaum, those who received the tax came to Kepler and said, "Does your teacher not pay the tax?" He said, "Yes." And when he came into the house, Yeshua spoke to him first, saying, "What do you think, Shimon? From whom do the sovereigns of the earth take toll or tax? From their own sons or from the strangers?" Kepler then said to him, "From the strangers." Yeshua said to him, "Then the sons are exempt. But lest we cause them to stumble, go to the sea and cast in a hook, and take the fish that comes up first, and when you have opened its mouth, you shall find a stater. Take that and give it to them for me and you."
Okay, very good. So it's interesting little thing that takes place here. We see these people who, by the way, this isn't the Romans, but we know about the part of the scriptures where Yeshua talks about give unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's, right? This ain't that. This is some of those, the tax collectors. They did many things, right? And they took and set aside different monies for different purposes, and again, when you talk about wicked people, it was kind of a bad thing to, when Yeshua was talked about, to say that he hung out with tax collectors, right? And so these are some of those people. I wanted to look at, let's see this, go down to verse 27. Verse 27, and it says you'll find a piece of money. What's that word there? Go to the word study there. Look that up in the word study there. It says there a weight or stater or attic silver coin equal to 4 silver drachmae, which at the time was equivalent to the shekel among the Jews. Right? So this is something that is the local people's currency. This is not the Roman currency. This is the stuff that we was using amongst each other. And so it's interesting, the question that Yeshua asks over here, Simon, and we have to assume that he was correct because he didn't say that he wasn't. And so it's talking about this idea of, they're talking about this tax, right? And we know from the Torah that when we think about tax or something that we owe to certain people or use in relation to certain people and not in terms of other people, we think about usury, right, or interest, right? So he asked a question. He said, do we tax, what did he say? He said, from whom do the kings of the earth take toll from? The sons or the strangers? How they trying to get their extra monies? Are they trying to get it from the people that are on the inside or the people from the outside? He said from the strangers. That's the right answer. But he said just to keep these people happy and not to have them sit up there trying to do whatever, he gonna pacify their thing. He did it kind of in a funny way. I wonder how long it took. Like, was it close to the sea where they was? I guess Capernaum is kind of close to the sea. But he had to go and get a fish hook and a thing or whatever and go catch a fish and cut it open and get the money out. But I think the idea here is seeing that these people, it's interesting that kind of in conjunction with the first part where you think about the idea of Yeshua being betrayed and handed over to these men. They're undisclosed men, but we understand them to, even though they're operating on the grand plan of the Most High, they are still wicked men.
Just like Pharaoh's wickedness was used.
Just like Pharaoh, right? He has wicked designs, but his designs and purposes were used for the Most High. And so it's interesting that with that being the last thing that was talked about, then we see these tax people who, they're kind of operating on the idea of rightness, they're collecting this money for the temple or whatever, but Messiah is not really, like, he don't necessarily feel obligated to go along with what they're doing, but he appeases them just for the sake of just not causing a stir. Kind of in this funny way, but it's like you have these people who are supposed to be righteous, but in fact they're actually the enemies.
I mean, like, they're collecting, because I'm looking at it, it seems like it might be used for the temple service, but it's like, where is this in the Torah? And it's like, it's not tithe, it's not an offering. So what is it? And it's just an interesting thing that how you brought it out where he's about to be delivered up to these people, but they're obviously not really his people because they're coming after him for this tax. Where is this tax even written? And it's also interesting that Yeshua only pays it for him. He doesn't even.
Yeah.
He's not paying it for everything.
I know, because they're not even the only two people there. They're just the ones that they talking to.
Yeah.
And then also Yeshua is there and Peter, but they come over and they come to Peter. Like, they don't even want to talk to Yeshua.
30 minutes probably going to be like, I'm not paying y'all.
Yeah. And so it's just interesting when you look at these people who, again, are supposed to be doing the things and living according to the Most High and operating with just weights and balances, and they kind of just make up these rules and try to, they're trying to just cash in on, these people have become oppressors, which is against the Torah. And so they can't really be operating on the side of the Torah, oppressing the people. Like it's just, these things aren't congruent with one another. But I think that because of the time that Yeshua is dealing with, is that he's not trying to make too much of a stir because of the fact that he's moving again on his timeline. He's just like, Peter, go out here and grab this fish real quick and look inside and you'll get this money and give it to him. Just to make him happy. Because again, he's trying to just move through town kind of unsuspected. Because again, he's moving toward his ultimate goal, which is to get to this finish line really that only he knows about. Right? He's beginning to show the disciples and talk to them more and more about what the finish line is, but he has this goal in mind, and he's all about reaching that goal. So it's interesting that we see him kind of appease these tax collectors here, but we're able to know that he's doing it, only just to kind of move his situation forward without these external hiccups that come along. Okay, so, we want to kind of end on a note of just thinking about the fact that, it's important, I think, for us to, from time to time, think about the kind of whys and the reasons for things. It's interesting that Yeshua, again, he brings up these ideas of resurrection, these ideas of raising from the dead, these ideas of the fact that he conquers death, the fact that he in fact had to be a sacrifice for sin. These are kind of foundational things, as it relates to our salvation, things that I think that is necessary for us to be able to have a good handle on their understanding. We think about the idea of redemption, atonement, and the act here of resurrection. All these things which he kind of hints about when we think about the fact that he must actually be killed, like he's literally going to the place where he's going to be killed, which lets you know that he must be killed. That there wasn't another way. He couldn't just die. He had to be killed. Right? And he raised from the dead. When you think about the fact that he raised from the dead on the third day from the time that he killed, it's almost as if he's also letting us know that he has to be killed at a particular time so that he can raise at a particular time. Which is another thing that kind of is hinted out in him just making this little statement. But it's just another thing to kind of think about and kind of ponder when we think about all of the things that Yeshua went through as he walked on this. All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments about any of those things? All right, so that being said, this will be done for now. Y'all willing, we'll be back on next Shabbat to talk more about Yeshua and all the things that he has said, as well as the Torah portion. All right, so for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.